The New York Times ran an opinion essay that polled 65 doctors, paramedics, and nurses who had worked in Gaza. 44 of the 65 medical professionals polled reported that they had seen multiple children who were shot in the head or heart. Bullet placement is important because it suggests the bullets were aimed intentionally to kill the children, and they weren't just hit by strays or ricochets. Several people claimed that the story was fake because the 3 X-ray images that the opinion essay attached looked kind of fake. New York Times then replied to their skeptics, writing that they, quote, had more than 160 photographs and videos to corroborate the detailed accounts of medical professionals treating preteen children who were shot in the head or chest, end quote. And the Times claimed they validated the credentials of the medical professionals, confirmed that they had actually been to Gaza, and had the photographs vetted by multiple independent experts in radiology, gunshot wounds, and pediatric trauma, who all attested to the image's credibility. I think that leaves us with 3 options. 1, the New York Times and the named 65 medical professionals are all lying. 2, elements of the Israeli armed forces are intentionally shooting to kill children. Or 3, children in Gaza are hit so frequently by errant gunfire that coincidentally large numbers of them happen to be hit in the head or heart. The opinion essay also goes on to describe how 63 out of 65 surveyed medical professionals saw severe malnutrition in the Gazan medical staff, the general population, and in patients. 25 out of 65 medical professionals report that they saw multiple babies who were born healthy later die from starvation, malnutrition, or lack of needed medical supplies. Basically, Israel is blocking needed supplies from entering Gaza, and newborn children are starving to death because of that. It's difficult to understand how many people are suffering from starvation or malnutrition. Which sources would have accurate information? Some sources might be biased to exaggerate the number, and other sources might be biased to underestimate the number. How do we know who we should trust? A letter signed by the U.S. Secretaries of State and Defense addressed to the Israeli government describes the humanitarian situation for over 2 million people in Gaza as increasingly dire, and says, quote, since Israel's assurances in March and the April letter, which produced important improvements in the provision of humanitarian assistance, the amount of aid delivered has dropped by more than 50%. The amount of assistance entering Gaza in September was the lowest of any month during the past year, end quote. This makes it seem like we have previously asked Israel to permit more aid into Gaza, and they haven't done so. I've seen some reporting suggest that this letter threatens to cut military support for Israel unless they permit more aid to enter Gaza. I would say that the consequences for Israel are not clearly specified in this letter. The letter gives Israel 30 days to, quote, reverse the downward humanitarian trajectory, end quote, and states that failure to do so may have, quote, implications for U.S. policy under National Security Memorandum 20. National Security Memorandum 20 basically says that if the U.S. is giving defense spending or services to a country, then that country should abide by international humanitarian laws. If the country fails to do so, then there will be remediation, where remediation can range from getting new assurances from the country that they will abide by humanitarian laws, all the way up to cutting off defense spending and services. In other words, cutting military support is a possible consequence for Israel, but so is requiring them to reassure us that they will continue to follow humanitarian laws. Which is why I say it's really not clear what consequence Israel is being threatened with if they don't permit more aid into Gaza. Let's wrap up. I personally would like our government to clearly articulate 3 things. 1, what are current U.S. objectives in Gaza and why? 2, how do our actions and the actions of our Israeli partners help us achieve our objective? And 3, what price in terms of Palestinian lives and suffering are we willing to pay in order to achieve our objectives, and why? My concern is that we actually don't have very clear objectives here, and I think we're likely to inflict more suffering than is justified on the Palestinians because of our ambiguous objectives. And I also think that if it is the case that Israel is targeting children, either specifically with small arms fire or generally through imposing famines or medical supply scarcity on the population of Gaza, if Israel is targeting children, then I think the U.S. response to that needs to be much more than a not so strongly worded letter. Thanks for your time.